Welcome back to Age of Coronavirus Gaming with the Stars. And today joining us is Nubbins Inc. Now, Nubbins Inc. is a community-focused streamer committed to building a positive and inclusive viewing environment community. He plays a lot of Valorant, it seems, and he's also a freelance social media manager. And he has a TikTok with about 23.8K followers. Please welcome to the show, Nubbins Inc. How you doing today?
I am doing absolutely fantastic. Thank you for taking the time to have me on your show.
I love your webcam. That thing is very, very nice quality right there.
Thank you. It's actually a used Sony A6000 that I picked up off of Facebook for $250. So
you could influence the streamers and say, listen, guys, you can pick up the good deals on these things. You can get some quality products.
Yeah, I mean, I think it was a bit of a lucky break on my part. I know a handful of people who are looking for used DSLRs now for streaming purposes. And I think, it was a pretty lucky find, but, at the end of the day, it doesn't really matter the condition of the body of the camera as long as it shoots a good video, because nobody's going to see it, right? So yeah, this thing is dented, it's dinged, the screen is scratched, but people can't see it, so it doesn't matter.
And you also have what is that, a virtual reality headset back there on the left?
Yeah, actually, these are both VR headsets. This is the Oculus Quest. This is an Oculus Quest that was actually sent to me by one of my friends who is getting rid of it, and he basically sent it up to me so that I could play VR games. And then on my other side is the original Oculus development kit. So this is the very first VR headset that was ever made.
How did you get a hold of that?
I don't remember. I'm gonna be honest with you.
I thought there was gonna be a good story there.
I literally was moving my desk, looked under my desk one day, and saw a plastic hardshell case that said Oculus on it, and I could not remember what was in it. So I opened it up and found, yeah, that is the original Oculus Rift SDK. I think it was like the one that they sold on Kickstarter back when they were trying to like kickstart the world of VR.
Yeah.
It was a while ago, actually.
Are you known to be this lucky?
Not typically, but when you put it back to back like that, I guess so.
I've always wanted to open up my like a gaming museum with all the consoles and the.
I'm not that much of a gear collector, although one of my good friends, actually the person who sent me this Oculus Quest, has an entire like library of failed consoles. So he has like the Ouya, he has like the Steam console that they tried to make, like all of the failed consoles that he could get his hands on. He has sitting on a shelf somewhere.
Does he have a Virtual Boy?
I don't know if he has a Virtual Boy. I'll have to ask him, but I don't know if he has one of those yet.
If he does, he probably doesn't look at it much.
Probably not, no.
They should have made a disclaimer on the Virtual Boys. Will actually blind you at some point in your life.
Yeah, I remember really wanting one of those things as a child, and looking back on it now, I am so glad that my parents never caved on that one.
Well, a lot of parents didn't cave on that one. I don't think it was a hot item.
It's very true.
So how's the streaming going on your end?
Great. It's been fantastic. I think that sort of given the unfortunate circumstances of COVID, taking the world over and forcing what can only be described as a massive cultural shift in society. Twitch especially, and streaming in general, has seen just hand over fist growth pretty much across the board. There are a lot of people that I talk to who got started in streaming purely because it was something to do during lockdown, when you're not allowed to go outside and socialize with people and have face-to-face contact. Streaming became a very logical alternative.
Well, let me ask you this, because I'm very interested in this subject, because I remember during the lockdowns, I'd be walking down the neighborhood and I was very surprised. I would just look into I'd look up and second floor window and there would be somebody playing a game. Then you look on the other side of the street, somebody playing a game, and I started to realize, wait, how often is this happening now?
Yeah.
People are picking this up. Are they picking it up because of COVID? And when you're giving me this story about, it looks like people have been picking up because of COVID. But my question to you is, had they always been interested and never did it? Or was it something that they felt kind of forced into doing?
That's a good question. I'd like to think that the vast majority of people who got into gaming and likewise streaming during lockdown essentially already had an inkling to do it in the back of their mind, but maybe never acted upon it for
Sure.
whatever reason. I think that there were maybe a handful of people who, if you remember back to like the beginning of lockdown, which feels like about a decade ago, everybody was playing Animal Crossing, and I think that that was
Yeah.
a great introduction to maybe a handful of people who hadn't really considered gaming as an alternate source of entertainment. That was like a good way for them to get into the hobby. So I think that there is probably some portion of people who always sort of had it in the back of their mind of like, I should give this streaming thing a try, or maybe I should see what Fortnite's all about, or something like that, or Warzone, I guess. And then there's probably a handful of people who are like, well, I'm out of Netflix to watch. I've watched Tiger King 7 times now, and the story doesn't change, so maybe let's try this Animal Crossing thing that everybody keeps talking about.
Now, when did you get into streaming?
I have actually been in streaming, in content creation in some way for about a decade. The very first live stream that I did was streaming the original Call of Duty Black Ops off of my MacBook Pro on Justin.tv. So like, the real old folks will remember Justin.tv. And it was the first time I'd ever live streamed content. My setup was incredibly janky. I didn't have a capture card. I literally took a laptop, flipped it around so that the webcam was facing my TV, and then had my younger brother sitting beside me with my chat pulled up on a separate laptop so he could read questions out to me. That I think was like circa 2010 or something like that.
Very helpful.
Yeah.
Very helpful, brother.
Yeah, very helpful, brother. Yeah, incredibly helpful.
Did he get a little tired of that after a while?
We didn't do that many streams because
okay.
I didn't. This was at a time before content creation was a career.
Sure, yeah.
It was really just sort of something to do. The idea
It was like a dabbling.
Yeah, exactly. The idea of making a career in content creation and becoming an online influencer just didn't really exist. That was the world of Hollywood. That was the world of television celebrities and Hollywood endorsements and like athlete sponsorships, stuff like that. You didn't really hear about people making YouTube content and getting paid for it, or making even less live stream content and getting paid for it. So it wasn't something that I really took that seriously at the beginning, because I, like the majority of people, thought that my life was destined to be a desk jockey 9 to 5. And times have changed since then in a massive way.
What happened to our age, our golden age of Hollywood and what we used to do, and I think that influence is slowly dying away.
Yeah, I think that you're definitely right. Like the age of vlogging, the age of live streamed IRL content, I think that there definitely is this broad rejection of the so-called like perfect life, I guess you could say. I think that there are still some people that make that sort of content, but I do think that there are people out there who definitely gravitate towards a more genuine portrayal of somebody's life as a content creator. I know that, sort of in my own content creation journey, I don't try to shield my audience from the bad sides of the life, as it were. Especially as somebody who talks about content creation and streaming. I think it's very important to highlight those negatives. I sort of got into I hesitate to use the phrase stream coaching, but like the advisory space, I guess you could say, almost purely by accident, and entirely because I wanted to make it very, very clear to some of the younger members of my audience that streaming is not all sunshine, rainbows, and puppy kisses and fluffy kittens. Like sometimes it is really truly horrendous. And that's not just from a mental health perspective, although that's a huge part of it, but having now experienced some of the worst that the internet has to offer, content creation is a very, very difficult and perilous journey that ought not to be taken lightly.
Sure.
And I just want to make sure that as part of this I guess educational stance, that anybody who is listening to my content knows everything about it, that you are making the decision to become a content creator having all of the best information that you can in order to make that decision.
You're bringing them up to speed, I guess, so that they don't get so shocked.
Because I think, we as content creators, even though we do try to, even though I try to present the most genuine version of myself to everybody out there, I like to say that, I believe the term my friend uses, a WYSIWYG, the what you see is what you get. I am the exact same person on camera as I am off camera. I don't put on a face, I don't put on a mask, I don't put on an act. But even trying to be as genuine as I can be, I think that there is sometimes a pressure to, pretend as though nothing's wrong and the show must go on, etc. Even for me as a creator, there are some days where I, just kind of put the smile on and get on with it. And
right.
So
because you're considering your paid audience as well. You're the people who give you a life.
Yeah, there is definitely that. I try to the way that I approach content is very much I want to make content that people find worthy of support. As opposed to a support me and see if my content is worthy, if that makes sense.
You have an expectation of excellence for what you want to make.
Exactly. I believe that if you make content that is worthy of people's support from the get-go, then people will naturally want to support somebody who is doing that. I've monetization of content is kind of a tricky subject. I don't believe that there's necessarily a right way or a wrong way of doing it. I just think that this is the way that I'm choosing to do it, if that makes sense.
You've been doing this for a little bit. Where do you want to take it? Do you have plans in mind? Are you wanting to do different types of games in the stream?
That's a tough question, because I have, I guess, what one would call aspirations. I think every streamer that starts streaming hopes to be able to make a stable living off of it, where you can build a life for yourself and build a future for one and one's family. But I always try to, I guess, temper my own expectations, as they were. So really, I would love to see the community grow. I'd love to one day be able to make, essentially a future out of this. And that being said, though, I don't know. I think I'm just as much along for the ride as every member of my community is, and we'll all see sort of where it ends up. Do you
often feel like a feather in the wind?
A little bit, yeah.
When it comes to this stuff.
Yeah, a little bit.
Yeah.
But I don't think that's necessarily a bad thing, because
no, not at all.
I think that in one's featheriness, I suppose you could say that there's also a level of flexibility where you're able to be adaptable and change with the times as you need. I think that if you are too mired down with trying to bring a singular concept to fruition,
Yeah.
You can get into sort of running into a brick wall territory. And so I think that there is merit to agility, and I think to a certain extent not being like completely weighed down by one's expectations is not necessarily a bad thing.
Well, having a plan is one thing, and trying to stick to a plan is
Hmm.
another.
Yeah, that's
And
exactly it.
if you have the pressure of trying to stick to a plan that you formulated in your head,
Hmm.
you're not living in reality anymore.
Yeah.
And then you kind of create this desperateness, I guess you would say,
Hmm.
that never works out with anybody.
Definitely not. And it's interesting that, like, talking about adaptability, the channel itself that I currently run was not is not my first Twitch channel. It is actually the second Twitch channel that I've made. And the original concept of this channel was that it would be a multi-person channel, that there would be a handful of us streaming different content to capture different audiences throughout the week. And without going into too much detail, I am now the only person left out of that project. But at the same time, I've been able to adapt my content and adapt strategies in order to turn this into a solo project that has worked out.
I've kind of been on off the seat of my pants a lot of times. Like, how did
Hmm.
I get from point A to point B? I couldn't tell. I really couldn't tell you how I got here.
Hmm.
But if I look back, I realize that it's really just about choices that we make.
Hmm.
And sometimes those choices that we make aren't really about the future. They're about the moment.
Hmm.
And when you stay in the moment, the future unfolds
Hmm.
for you. That's how I've always thought of it. And a lot of times it unfolds in such a beautiful fashion.
Hmm.
And you're just like, wow, how did I get here? Not in a like bad sense, but like, wow, it's almost a miracle.
Yeah, no, there have been several times where I've sort of, I guess, reflected on the things that have happened to get me to where I am now. And it is almost miraculous. You're right. It is seemingly illogical almost.
Mhm.
But I'm so incredibly grateful and thankful that I've been able to accomplish even what I've been able to accomplish. In and of itself is again just miraculous.
There's a confidence in that, and there's a trust in that.
Mm,
That after a while, when you've done this enough, it could really soothe you
hmm.
just thinking about it, and just you're like, I'll figure it out. That's how it always comes to. I'll figure it out.
Exactly.
You know. So I guess asking you the question, what's your future look like? And maybe not such a good question.
I no, I mean, I think it's a good question. It's just, I think it's, for me, it's a very difficult one to answer, you know?
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Yeah, I agree with that. Definitely. I used to think that I would be at some places sometimes,
Hmm.
but it's never worked out the way I thought it would.
Hmm.
But I wouldn't want it to work out any other way.
Definitely
'Cause
not. No.
it's just more exciting this way.
Yeah. Well, I mean, perfect example. I think if I had asked myself, even a year and a half ago at the start of lockdown, do you think you are going to be interviewed for television on about your channel? I would have laughed at myself.
Right,
But you know what? Here we are. So
right.
it works out.
Yeah, and it's not such a bad time, right?
Definitely no. I'm having an absolute blast. I love talking about this stuff.
Exactly. And on that note, we got to go. So, thank you for giving me an ending.
Yeah. No, not a problem. Natural segue.
Exactly. Nubbins Inc. Look him up on TikTok, Twitch, Twitter, what have you. Thank you so much, my friend.
No, I appreciate it. Again, thank you for having me on, and it was an absolute joy.